Hi, this is Virendra Singh from ToolsQA.com. I welcome you to class number 8 on Java in Cucumber. In this class, we will talk about assertions. Now, assertions are basically the validation step where you validate the outcome from the application with some expected results. If the two match, then we say that if the two results match, then we say that the test has passed, or else we say that the test has failed. Now, every testing framework, it gives you a mechanism to basically inform the framework that whether a test has passed or failed, or is there any other state that the test wants to inform about to the framework. So that's basically what assertions is all about. It's a way to validate your results. Now, in this class, we will specifically talk about assertions in the context of Cucumber, and we will talk about how Cucumber understands assertions and how it marks a test fail or passed based on what test has given to Cucumber. Now, let me just quickly take you through the agenda of the day. The agenda is the first thing that we will understand is returning results from Cucumber tests. What it means is that we will understand how a test step can tell Cucumber whether it has passed or failed. Then after that, we will talk about the different states in which a test step can be in Cucumber. And there are 4 states. We will talk about the 4 states. Then we will talk about the JUnit assertion library, which is the library that we will use to do all our validations. And we will take some examples from the JUnit assertion library and we will try to implement them. All right, so with this in mind, let me just quickly jump to the first slide. The first slide talks about test results. Now, test results is, as the name suggests, it is the result of a given test. So you execute a test and the outcome of it is called a test result. So what is it? Any test that you run, at the end, it will verify something from the application and it will verify it against a static baseline. Something that you have kept as a static outcome of the test. So the expected condition, which is the static baseline, if it matches with the actual, which you get from the application, if they both match, you mark a test pass, otherwise you mark a test fail, right? So how does your test inform Cucumber that it has passed or it has failed, right? So Cucumber relies on exceptions to mark a test pass or fail. What it means is that if your test step produces an exception, then Cucumber will assume that it has failed. Otherwise, it will straight away assume that your test has passed. Now to show that, let me just quickly take you back to the project that we had created from earlier classes. I will just trim down the project and I will remove the extra scenarios that we added. Now, I will just take the very first basic scenario that we created earlier, which was a valid login. So we said, if you look at the scenario, it's quite easy to understand. It says that verify that user is able to log in using a valid username and password. The given condition says that user is on toolsqa.com, or the right site would be store.demoqa.com. So it says that given user is on store.demoqa.com, when user clicks on my account link and user logs in using a valid username, which is test username, and a password, which is EW. Let's just give it the right password. So the right password is this, and learn cucumber was the username. So this time we are giving a valid username and password. Then once user has logged in, then the test just verifies whether the My Account page is displayed or not. Now this is the point where we do our validation. Now if I go back here and if I right click and if I just say find step, it will take me to where the step is present. So you would see that in this step, all we have done is we have done a find element and we have tried to find an element with an ID account logout, right? So why did we do that? Because you would remember from the previous classes that stored on store.demoqa.com, if you log in, with a valid username and password, you would be taken to the My Account page, and in the My Account page there is a logout button. This button is specific to logged in pages. It won't appear on the pages which are on all the browsers, or on the pages which are not logged in with a valid username. So this, we just verified whether this link occurs or not, right? So if this link doesn't occur, then what will happen is that the find element command will throw an exception. Now, as we discussed earlier, if a step throws an exception, Cucumber assumes that the test has failed, that the particular test step has failed. So if the element is present, it won't throw any exception, and it means that user has logged in because there is a logout button. If the logout button is not present, then it will throw an exception and Cucumber will understand that the test has failed. Now let us quickly see, let us try to run the same test, and this time what we will do, uh, we will put this statement inside a try catch so that this exception is eaten up and Cucumber never gets an exception. So we'll just put a try catch block around it, and I will modify the test, and I will just enter a wrong password. Now let us see what happens. So I will go back here, I will run my tests, and let's see what we get this time. So it will launch the browser, it will go to store.demoqa.com, it will click on the My Account link, and then it should take us to the login page where I will enter a wrong username and password. Now once I enter the wrong username and password, my next step would try to verify that whether a logout button is present or not. And it won't be able to verify that. Uh, and you would see that while creating the browser, we had given a timeout of 2 minutes. So it will keep on uh, polling the browser uh, at max 2 minutes before declaring that it wasn't able to find the element. So you would see that by this time you haven't seen any result, and the test is still going on. You can verify it from here. You would see that um, it's still in the progressing state. So we will wait for a few minutes, actually 2 minutes. I should have reduced the time, but now that we have done it, let it continue, and let us see what the outcome would be. So what we are expecting is that in this particular step, which is this one, driver.findElement will fail. As a result, uh, an exception will be thrown because find element, this method throws an exception if it's not able to find the required element. Now once it's not able to find the required element, it will throw an exception. Exception will be caught here, and once the exception is caught, uh, the test step doesn't throw it to Cucumber. So Cucumber never gets the exception, and Cucumber assumes that the test step has passed successfully, which we should be seeing in a few minutes. Um, I think it should have already been 2 minutes, but let's wait. So we should have reduced the timeout to something like 250 milliseconds or something like that, but it's 2 minutes now. Okay, so the 2 minutes have passed, and you would see that uh, in the logs, you would see that it says that there was one scenario, there were 4 steps, and there was no failure. Everything passed. Everything just went by smooth. You can see that all the login steps, they are all passed. However, if you go back to the application, you would see that the user wasn't able to log in. There was an invalid username, and there was a error message which said invalid login credentials. So there was a false pass when actually the test failed. So how can you cater to these situations? So make sure that whenever your test fails, uh, it throws an exception. So I will just continue this example, and what I will do is I will check it like this, logout button, and let's just play around with the code. So what I will do, I will try to find the element logout button here, and after the catch, let's say we will print something out. Not able to find the element, and just after that, what I will do is I will make sure that once I get an exception, I make sure that I throw the exception back to the caller. So basically, I throw the exception back to Cucumber. So once I do this, it will inform Cucumber that there was an exception in the step and the test should fail. The test step has failed. Now I will just quickly change it to milliseconds, and I change it to yeah, so I'll change it to 250 milliseconds, or let's just say 800 milliseconds. Alright, so now let us run the test again and let's see what this statement, how the statement makes a difference. We have just thrown the exception back to the caller. So I will go ahead and I will run the test, and you would see that it opens up the browser. It will go to demoqa.com. It will log in, and then as the credentials are wrong, it will stay on this page. As soon as it stays on this page, you would see that an exception would be raised, which is no such element exception. Now, once the exception is raised, you would see that you would start getting uh, the right results. You would see that there was one scenario, there were 4 steps, and then it says that one failed and the remaining passed. And this is this is basically the time it took. We would format this, and we would format it in a better way, but later on. For the time being, if you go back to your results window, JUnit results window, you would see that the last test step has failed. So the only thing that you have to remember is that Cucumber understands exception. If there is an exception, it would say that the test has failed, and the exception could be of any type. But usually we prefer the assert type of exceptions. I will talk about asserts in a few minutes, but the key point to understand here is that make sure that your test throws an exception whenever it fails. A test step throws an exception whenever it fails. Also pay attention that if any one of the steps fail, the whole scenario is marked as failed. Alright, similarly, the feature is also marked as failed. So this is the whole logic about having exceptions. Now, I hope that was quite clear with you. Now let me just quickly move on to the next slide. The next slide talks about test step states. So what are the different states that a test step can be? We just saw that a test step can either be pass or fail. Right? These are the two test states. Then there are 2 more test states. So basically a test step can be marked as passed or failed based on the outcome of the test step. If any test step fails, the whole test is marked as failed. We just saw it here. If any test step fails, the whole test is marked as failed. And then there are basically 4 different states which a test step can go into. The 4 states are undefined, pending, failed, and passed. How do we get to these states? Let us go one by one. The first state is undefined, which means that there is no step definition for a given scenario step. So how can we show that? So what we will do, we will just make a small change in our given step so that uh, our scenario definition, our step definition doesn't match the step that we have given. So what will happen is that when Cucumber will try to find this step definition, it won't be able to find it, and it will throw an undefined step exception which will mark the step as undefined. Let us just quickly run it, and you would see that it will just fail as soon as we launch it. You would see that let me just go back here, and you would see that uh, there were 3 steps which were skipped, and there was 1 step which went into an undefined state, and the undefined state step would be the one which doesn't have a step definition, and Cucumber will suggest you a step definition for this step. You would see that this is the step definition it is suggesting. So this is basically what an undefined state means. Whenever there is no step definition for a scenario step, it means it will throw an undefined step exception. Now the second state is pending. A pending step is a step which is present there, but there is no implementation to the test step. For example, uh, for the step definition. For example, let's say we never wrote this code. Let's say this code was never written. So what we can do, we can inform Cucumber that we haven't yet implemented the navigate to method right now. So don't try to execute it. Or if you try to execute, there will be an exception that will be through, and the exception would be uh, not implemented exception, or we can just copy it from here, pending exception. Basically, it would be pending exception. Now this pending exception is present inside the cucumber.api package. Just use it, and now what will happen is that this particular line here means that whenever Cucumber will come to this step, it will encounter an exception and it will stop the test right there, and it will skip the, the coming test steps, and it will mark this particular step as pending. So you can see it quickly by running the test. Once you run the test, you would see that it quickly ran. If you go back to logs, you would see that it clearly says that there were 4 steps. The 3 steps were skipped. There was 1 step which was pending, and you would see that it will say that there was 1 step pending. It will give you where the exception came from. Right, so this is how you can tell Cucumber that the step definition is present, but it has not yet been implemented. So basically you throw the pending exception, exception. So this is how you can mark a test step as pending. So I would just come back to the original code, and we just discussed 2 states, undefined and pending. We had already discussed failed and passed. Whenever a test scenario or a test step throws an exception, it is marked automatically as failed. Otherwise, if there is no exception that has been thrown, it is marked as passed. So we just discussed the other 2 as well. Now, just to summarize, there are 4 states: undefined, pending, failed, and passed. And we now know what these states are and how we can inform Cucumber that our test step is in any of the 4 states. Right. So let us move on to the next slide, and let's see what we have here. Failure examples. Now, taking the example of the login scenario, let us take a better way, let us understand a better way of marking our tests as failed. So one way is just throw an exception and everything should be fine. Right. Other way is to basically understand the actual problem and uh, assert it. Right. So we want to assert that the logout button is not null. If user is actually inside a logged in page, then the logout button should be there, and the find element command should return a valid logout button, right? It shouldn't be null. So we would verify that logout is not equal to null. To verify things like this, we have an assert library. So if you type in assert and then you do a dot, you would see that you get following options. The first option is that you can use assert from junit.framework.assert, or you can use it from org.junit.assert, or you can use the testng assert library. You can use any of the 3 libraries, but I would always suggest that go for the org.junit.assert library in Cucumber. So just do this and then do a dot. Now look at the wide variety of asserts that you have. Now let me just quickly take one assert and explain it. So basically, let's say you want to compare 2 double values, right? Or you want to compare, let us say, string values. Let's say you want to compare 2 string values, right? So you can say that the message, sorry, this is not the string value. Let me just find the string value for you. Um, assert equals, there should be one string message equal. Okay, yeah, this is the one. Basically, now we don't have the string one here. It should be somewhere here. Or not a problem. A string is basically converted to an object. So I think the object one is the right one. But let me just take an example of long. So what this assert, and let us take an example of assert equals. I will go up. Let's say this one. So this assert equals, it says that it wants to compare, that was a bit of an accent. So it says that assert equals, it wants to compare uh, two double values, the expected and the actual, and if they pass or fail, you want to print a message. So what you can do is, let's say you want to compare the two values. What you will do, you will just say this two values don't match up, and then the expected is 80 and actual is 90, let's say. So what will happen is that this assert equal will compare the two values. If the two values are not correct, it will throw an exception, and in the exception it will mention the text value of this two values do not match. So when it does that, uh, there are two things that we achieve. First, we throw an exception which informs Cucumber that the test is not valid, the test has failed, the test step has failed, and it also prints out a message on the console. So let us just quickly take this example. This is not the right example because here we just wanted to compare whether logout button is null or not, which we will see in a few seconds. But what we have done is just we have compared two random values. So let us see what outcome do we get. So I will run it. It will launch the browser. It will take you to store.demoqa.com. It will try to log in. As the credentials are wrong, it won't be able to log in. You will get an exception. Uh, the exception, so the first exception would be the find element. The find element will not work because we haven't successfully logged in. You can see it here. It will throw an exception. We will catch the exception, and we should print this message somewhere. So if you go back here, you would see that this message should have been printed somewhere. So you would see that the message is printed here. It says not able to find the element, right? But after that, it tries to assert, and while asserting, it sees that 80 is not equals to 90. So it means that the assertion has failed. With the failed assertion, which you can see right here, it is marked as blue, which means a failure. And if you look at the logs, it would say that one failed, that means one step failed, right? You can see that it has failed here, and the overall scenario has failed, right? And you would see that there is an assertion that has happened. So you can see that assertion error, two values do not match. Expected is 80 but was 90. So you can see that there is a very beautiful message that prints out with the assertion that you applied. So that's why we use assertion, because they give you a better way of comparison, and it abstracts out the comparison logic from the test, and at the same time it gives you uh, nice messages on the console so that you can easily understand what went wrong. So if I look at the test results, I can easily say that the expected value is 80, but we got 90. So that was one way to use asserts, and asserts are good ways to basically mark your test or validate your test results. Now let us quickly see uh, one more assert, which will check for null. Assert null, right? There is this message, there is this particular assert which says assert not null, where you would want to use this whenever you want to check whether the object is null or not. And if I go back here, and then you can print a message, whatever message you want. Alright, so you can easily print this message. Let's see. let's see what the error message is that we are getting. Okay, yeah, so basically it just checks for assert not null, but there was one overload which was basically not null, which was basically a string message, right? So you can give a message, you can say log out button is not available, and then you can give the log out button web element, right? Simple as that. Now you have again used assert to properly assert your condition. The condition is that logout button should not be null, right? Because if the user has successfully logged in, then the logout button should have some right value. So if I run the test again, as we have given wrong credentials, we are expecting that the test will fail. And let's see how it fails. Okay, there was a network error. Uh, yeah, basically I lost my connection. So let me just quickly check it out, what happened. Alright, so there was some network issues that we were facing. So I will just repeat what I said in the past few minutes. So what I said was we are using assert to basically assert that the logout button is not null. So there is a specific assert for that. You can find it by doing assert dot, and you would see assert not null. It takes a message that you want to print when the logout button is actually null, and then put you give the object which you are verifying for null condition. So you would see that I've just given the logout button and the message that I want to print. And if I run this test again, you would see that as we have given wrong credentials, this step would fail, and we would get a proper message on screen, and we would get the test as failed also. So you can see that it opens demoqa.com, it logs in, and with invalid credentials, as a result, we are not able to log in properly. Now, as a result, the test will fail. You would see that there was one scenario and one scenario failed, and there were 4 steps, out of which one failed and the remaining 3 passed. And here you would see that there was an assertion error. The assertion was logout button is not available. This is exactly the message that I have printed here. So basically assertions, and when it prints the message, it also gives you the line number where the test has failed. So you can see, if you look at this particular stack trace, it says that in the login step definitions in this method at line number 58, which is basically this line, the test failed. So it gives you an easy way to go back and find where the test actually failed. So this is very useful information, and that is why you would prefer using asserts. So when you use asserts, you always get the failures in front of you. It says that this particular JUnit runner, it's not exactly designed for Cucumber, so don't worry if it gives you wrong results. But the messages here, these messages should give you exact results. So here it says that one failed and 3 steps passed, and overall the scenario failed. Right. So basically this is what assertions are all about. This is how you can inform Cucumber whether your test step has passed or failed, and overall whether your scenario has passed or failed. If you do a assert dot, you would see a lot of options, quite a lot of options which can suit any of your needs related to assertions. So just use these assertions in your test, and give proper messages so that at the end you get proper output which is actionable. You can look at the output and you can go back and find the problem in your tests, or you can find the actual application bug, and it will help you a lot. So this was all about assertions. I hope the session was fruitful to you, and we have just talked about all these things. So you can just go back and listen to the video again. And thank you for joining in. I will see you in the next class.